What's worse than hiding details about one of the biggest scandals of our generation? Is it misleading the public with promises to reveal the truth?
We have Texas, we have this, we have all of the things. And are people still talking about this guy, this creep? That is unbelievable.
Is it editing and redacting crucial evidence to shift the narrative?
Here, there's like a sudden shift in the video. I have not changed this video in any way. I have it in the Premiere Pro timeline, which I guess they had as well. So this is as intended. So there's this just weird shifts in the footage.
Or is it labeling the whole thing a nothing burger after harping on about it for months?
But I don't understand why the Jeffrey Epstein case would be of interest to anybody. It's pretty boring stuff. It's sordid, but it's boring.
Unfortunately, these three issues only scratch the surface of the mind games Donald Trump has employed to make anyone asking about the Epstein files look like a crazy conspiracy theorist.
Are you still talking about Jeffrey Epstein? This guy's been talked about for years. You're asking, we have Texas, we have this, we have all of the things.
Hi, I'm the Internet Anarchist. I create weekly YouTube documentaries, and today we'll be diving headfirst into the details surrounding Donald Trump's alleged crazy cover-up of the Epstein files. We'll examine how politicians created a media frenzy around the case, what journalists and Trump's closest allies have revealed about the situation, and why they are so desperate to make you forget everything about Epstein. Before we discuss why and how Trump is distancing himself from anything related to the Epstein files, we first must understand who Jeffrey Epstein was and his connection to the current US president. Throughout his life, Epstein was always in close proximity to the rich and powerful. Initially, he worked as a math teacher at the prestigious Delton School before moving to the now defunct Bear Stearns Investment Group, where he had tutored the CEO's son. His position as financier gave Epstein access to billionaires like Lex Wexner and Leon Black, as well as millions of dollars in compensation for various financial services and investment advice. With that kind of money and connections, it was no surprise that Epstein found himself attending events, parties, and clubs in various elite circles. Between the 80s and early 2000s, one of Epstein's more notable associations was with Donald Trump. They were frequently photographed together and seemed to be inseparable at whatever occasion they attended. Epstein was even a frequent guest at Trump's Palm Beach club, Mar-a-Lago.
Come on in, go inside.
An invitation into Donald Trump's world from 1992, found in the NBC archives, shows the future president welcoming Jeffrey Epstein to his Mar-a-Lago estate. The get-together more than a decade before Epstein pleaded guilty to prostitution charges in Florida. Both men are seen enjoying themselves, Trump pointing out women dancing in front of them.
In his book, How to Get Rich, Trump described Epstein with friendly words, like, "As mysterious as Jeffrey is, he's one of the few people I know who can get by on just a first name. My staff never asks for a last name in his case," which in a way puts him up there with Elvis. Going by Trump's other statements about Epstein, it seems these sorts of visits go both ways, with Trump allegedly stating, "The one time I visited Epstein's Palm Beach home, the swimming pool was full of beautiful young girls. How nice, I thought. He let the neighborhood kids use his pool." Unfortunately, pool parties weren't the main reason underage girls were at Epstein's residence. Starting in 2005, numerous girls stepped forwards with accusations of disgustingly inappropriate acts inflicted upon them by Epstein at his Palm Beach home. According to the victim's testimony, Epstein would lure them to his home with the promise of making a few $100s in exchange for a harmless massage. However, once they were alone, Epstein would escalate things into a far more disturbing encounter that left the girls traumatized.
He starts off with giving him a massage. The more you do with him, the more you make. Basically, if you take off your clothes, you're gonna make more. If you let him do things to you, you're gonna make more.
Like do things, you mean touch you?
Yeah, touch you in inappropriate places. I didn't need, I wouldn't like let him touch me or anything like that. So after that, he's like, you know what? He's like, listen, I'll pay you $200 for every girl that you bring to me.
Investigators went on to identify over 30 other victims and wasted no time in arresting Epstein. While such heinous activities would warrant several years in federal prison, Epstein somehow managed to walk away with only a little over a year in jail. One could imagine that such a scandalous case surrounding such a well-connected elite would drum up a lot of coverage from the media, but sadly, that wasn't the case. The only articles produced on the topic at the time were from the New York Times. Even before the arrest was made, victims Maria and Annie Farmer tried to speak out about the abuse to Vanity Fair journalist Vicky Ward, but were quietly ignored. This strange phenomenon wasn't limited to Vanity Fair, as other media companies like ABC News were approached with damning evidence against Epstein and still refused to cover it.
I've had the story for 3 years. I've had this interview with Virginia Roberts. We would not put it on the air. First of all, I was told, who's Jeffrey Epstein? No one knows who that is. This is a stupid story. Then the palace found out that we had her whole allegations about Prince Andrew and threatened us a million different ways. We were so afraid we wouldn't be able to interview Kate and Will that also quashed the story.
The only time anyone was willing to discuss Epstein's crimes was following his second arrest in 2019 for trafficking minors. However, Epstein would never face the full wrath of the law as he suddenly passed away in police custody while awaiting trial. After a brief investigation and autopsy, it was ruled out as self-inflicted. With that, the true nature of Epstein's crimes only survived in the form of video and material evidence recovered during an FBI raid of his New York home, although most of the footage was supposedly lost not long after. This naturally left people wondering, why is it that any evidence or information around Epstein's crimes conveniently gets lost, ignored, or minimized? A story about a powerful and connected elite abusing their power for pleasure should have been shouted from the rooftops from the very start, but it was all buried. What sort of forces were keeping these atrocities sealed behind closed doors? How could media companies turn a blind eye to this? And more importantly, why are they only touting this story when the chief perpetrator was already gone? With the news of Epstein's passing and details about his previous crimes coming to light, the public became very interested in knowing what exactly happened to the convicted offender and who he was associated with. A majority of the populace was convinced that Epstein didn't take his life and pushed back against official reports. With the hashtag Epstein didn't kill himself going viral across social media, skepticism with anything the government was saying about Epstein was at an all-time high. With people now looking at everyone associated with Epstein in the past through such a harsh lens, billionaires like Bill Gates and notable academics like Lawrence Krauss were forced to completely disavow him.
Had a number of meetings with Jeffrey Epstein. What did you know about him when you were meeting with him, as you've said yourself, in the hopes of raising money?
I had dinners with him. I regret doing that. He had relationships with people he said, would give to global health, which is a interest I have. Not nearly enough philanthropy goes in that direction. Those meetings were a mistake.
Even massive firms like JP Morgan were forced to pay the price for associating with Epstein's activities. However, the man who should have truly felt the heat when it came to questioning those socialized with Epstein was none other than Donald Trump. After all, they had a very public history together, and the FBI had found 14 different numbers for Trump in Epstein's address book. Although, before any concerns could set in, Trump managed to deflect the accusation on other elites and powerful people during his first presidential campaign.
Bill Clinton.
Nice guy. Got a lot of problems coming up, in my opinion, with the famous island with Jeffrey Epstein. A lot of problems.
After becoming president, Trump further distanced himself from Epstein and tried to minimize statements about his former friend.
Well, I knew him like everybody in Palm Beach knew him. I mean, people in Palm Beach knew him. He was a fixture in Palm Beach. I had a falling out with him a long time ago. I don't think I've spoken to him for 15 years. I wasn't a fan.
Trump would also use the speculation around Epstein's death to throw shade at his political rivals and absolve himself of any wrongdoing. He even went as far as grandstanding with demands for full investigation into what really happened to Epstein, quoting, "What we're saying is that we want an investigation. I want a full investigation. And that's what I absolutely am demanding. So you have to ask, did Bill Clinton go to the island? That's the question. If you find that out, you're going to know a lot." Considering the fact that Trump was a frequent passenger on Epstein's private jet, the same could have been said about him. However, that didn't stop him from pushing the narrative that his rivals were behind what happened to Epstein.
Do you think it's possible that Epstein was killed?
Oh, sure, it's possible. I mean, I don't really believe. I think he probably committed He had a life with, beautiful homes and beautiful everything, and he, all of a sudden, he's incarcerated and not doing very well.
Trump was using every single opportunity to divert any attention away from his previous dealings with Epstein and feigned ignorance to the crucial aspects of the case. When he failed to get re-elected in 2021, Trump couldn't help but double down on making everyone else look like they were hiding the truth about Epstein's case. During his 2024 presidential campaign, Trump presented himself as the one to reveal the truth about Epstein's crimes and publicize the names of those involved. Trump wanted people to believe that he didn't have anything to hide since he was trying to give them the answers to the questions the current administration was keeping secret.
Some people think that one way to build trust is to declassify things that everyone's talking about. I know you talked earlier about it. I don't want to be a conspiracy theorist. So if you were president, would you declassify, you can answer yes or no to these. Would you declassify the 9/11 files?
Yeah.
Would you declassify JFK files?
Yeah.
Would you,
I did a lot of it.
Would you declassify the Epstein files?
Yeah, I would.
All right.
I guess I would.
Around that time, the scandal was at the forefront of the public consciousness, as a US judge had already ordered that 170 names on Epstein's list be disclosed. The idea of Trump being the messiah that would peel back the veil around the Epstein files quickly spread throughout his political sphere, as many of his supporters began demanding the file be released to the public.
It's the same thing with Epstein's list. It's like, what the hell are these Republicans doing? Oh,
I saw you
give out the list.
I saw you make news this morning about that. I gotta get to that.
Yeah.
You say that the FBI has Epstein's list. They're sitting on it. That doesn't seem like something you should do. You're protecting the world's foremost predator.
Simple, because of who's on that list. You don't think that Bill Gates is lobbying Congress night and day to prevent the disclosure of that list? And why is it that the Senate, and good for Senator Blackburn to try to get it out, but then Dick Durbin comes over the top and says, no, we're not going to release the names. I don't care about the list itself, but he released the names, right? What the hell are the House Republicans doing?
With that being said, it seemed inevitable that every detail concerning Epstein and his connections would be brought to light if Trump was in power. Sadly, things wouldn't be that easy, as Trump would also cover up the same information he accused his opposition of withholding. Once Trump became president for the second time, he and his supporters couldn't help but turn the Epstein story into a publicity tour, filled with promises of releasing the list as soon as possible.
Because you said last week that you have the Epstein files on your desk. When can we see them, and what's taking so long to release them?
I do. Jesse, there are well over, this will make you sick, 200 victims. 200. So we have, over 250 actually. So we have to make sure that their identity is protected. Tomorrow, Jesse, breaking news right now, you're going to see some Epstein information being released.
The new information she referenced would be nothing more than a showing of several influencers that came to the White House to wave around binders titled Epstein List Phase 1.
Called it breaking news. She promised that we would get the Epstein files today, and while that turned out technically to be true, what we've seen so far, critics have argued tonight, really hasn't lived up to the dramatic billing. Now, we began the day with somewhat high expectation, having seen some influencers with so-called Epstein file folders.
As if obscuring the real documents wasn't concerning enough, one of Trump's biggest supporters, Elon Musk, accused him of withholding information because it would implicate him as well, with a tweet reading, "Time to drop the really big bomb. Donald Trump is in the Epstein files. That is the real reason they have not been made public. Have a nice day, Donald J. Trump." As you'd expect, Trump didn't address the concerns directly and tried to downplay the situation by calling it, quote, old news. Reading, "That's been old news that has been talked about for years. Even Epstein's lawyer said I had nothing to do with it. It's old news. This has been talked about for years and years, and as you know, I was not friendly with Epstein for probably 18 years before he died. I was not at all friendly with him." While Elon's statement was unsubstantiated and later deleted, it was enough for people to begin questioning everything Trump was telling them. Why hadn't he or his administration done the one thing they said was at the top of their priority list? How could they expect the public to be satisfied with little to no new information about the case they supposedly had the details of? Well, it seems they expect people to just take their word at face value. Despite a recent FBI memo mentioning that there were over 1,000 victims involved in the case, the current FBI director tried to make people believe that most of the information was already given to the public.
Do you think that myself, Bongino, and others would participate in hiding information about Epstein's grotesque activities? Or do you think we would also participate in not prosecuting people we had evidence to prosecute people on? But the problem is there's been like 15 years of people coming in and creating fictions about this that doesn't exist.
When the Attorney General was questioned about the Epstein files, Trump stepped in and desperately tried to sweep it under the rug by saying no one cares about it.
Costa, he allegedly said that he did work for an intelligence agency. So could you resolve whether or not he did? And also, could you say why there was a minute missing from the jailhouse tape on the night of the set?
Yeah, sure. If
Hey,
I
Pam,
could...
could I just interrupt for
Sure.
1 second? Are you still talking about Jeffrey Epstein? This guy's been talked about for years. You're asking, we have Texas, we have this, we have all of the things. And are people still talking about this guy, this creep?
After being given the time to answer, she would totally sidestep the question by blaming the delay on red tape.
First, to back up on that, in February, I did an interview on Fox, and it's been getting a lot of attention because I said, I was asked a question about the client list, and my response was, it's sitting on my desk to be reviewed, meaning the file along with the JFK, MLK files as well. That's what I meant by that.
The footage being referenced here was a several-hour-long surveillance recording of the area around Epstein's cell prior to his passing. However, that footage didn't do much to quell the public concern, as Epstein's cell was not only barely visible, but had several minutes removed before being released. The only point of note was that someone else, besides the guards, was in the facility that night.
It's at 10:38 p.m., remember, everyone's supposed to have been in their jail cell for 2.5 hours at this point. No prisoners. You can see a guard goes over to somewhere out of sight. We can't see it. None of the cameras were recording except for this one. And then moments later, we see a little bit of orange near the staircase. Now I'm gonna have to zoom into this. It's extremely hard to see, but you can see a little pixel of orange makes its way up the staircase, right? And then we're gonna see the guard return to his chair, ostensibly locking someone up maybe at that time, but who? Who is that person? Right? Because previously we were told that everyone was in their jail cell at 8 p.m. 2.5 hours later, the guards take someone up, or it looks like that. You know, it's hard to see, but there's some sort of orange something going up the staircase to Epstein's cell block.
Of course, officials tried to explain this away by claiming that Epstein left his cell to make a phone call.
Cross-reference that with this recent memo, we can surmise who that was. It says the FBI's independent review of this footage confirmed from the time Epstein was locked in his cell around 10:40 p.m. on August 9th until 6:30 a.m. Nobody entered any of the tiers of the shoe. So we're supposed to believe that Epstein now is that guy, the mystery man, who's outside of his cell 2.5 hours after lockdown. It's just sort of tossed in this memo here without any explanation, but it's never mentioned in the OIG's original report in 2023. In fact, the only thing that is mentioned is that Epstein was allowed an unmonitored phone call, which was against the rules, but he was allowed it anyways, and he returned to his cell after the call, which was at 7 p.m. So again, we were led to believe he was in his jail cell at 8 p.m. by the official report, and then now the FBI's kind of come out and in one line said something quite remarkable.
If the Trump administration wasn't going to provide the public with the truth, then it seems journalists had to pick up the slack by revealing some new evidence about people involved with Epstein. On the 17th of July 2025, the Wall Street Journal released an article detailing a set of letters Trump sent to Epstein for his 50th birthday. The letter contained various messages to Epstein contained in a drawing of an undressed woman. As concerning as that might be, the part of the letter that really stood out was Trump's closing statement to Epstein. Happy birthday, and may every day be another wonderful secret. Not long after this story went public, Trump filed a defamation lawsuit against the media outlet and feverishly denied the validity of the letter. However, when you consider how fast Trump's connections to Epstein were coming to light, silencing on media was nowhere near enough to remedy the situation or sway public opinion. Instead, all he was doing was adding rocket fuel to the fire. Initially, Trump saw the Epstein files as a quick ticket to winning public favor and power. However, when it came to make good on his promise, Trump completely went back on his word and tried to cover up the situation. Unfortunately, he forgot how catastrophic the Streisand effect could be. The more he wanted people to forget, the more they questioned, and it seemed shaming people into silence is only going to make things worse. Looking at the current state of things, the controversy around the Epstein files could go one of two ways. Either Trump succeeds in his cover-up and gets the public to take his word without question, or Trump's cover-up escalates into an even more nightmarish situation that would far outweigh the fallout from just releasing the list. Whichever way it goes, Trump is going to have a hard time convincing people he wasn't involved in or aware of Epstein's horrendous activities.